I had every negative side effect after that imaginable. I had incontinence, I had erectile dysfunction. None of these things my doctor talked about. And it was at that point that I began to educate myself on cancer and healing. There was a correlation between my diet and prostate cancer.
So let me get started with introducing myself for those who don't know me, those who are here for the very first time. My name is Gisele ADECHIAN. I'm a raw food chef, plant-based, but I'm also a certified integrative nutrition health coach. And Solange?
I am Solange ADECHIAN. I am doctor in nutrition. I am biologist also, and I have starting meditation and yoga classes too in Panama.
Good, thank you so much. And so, Harold, sorry, you're going to introduce yourself in a few minutes. But before you introduce yourself, I know that you are a cancer survivor, right? That's how you like to maybe advertise that. And it's very much, I think, rewarding to know that you walked that journey. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what kind of cancer you successfully recovered from?
Mm-hmm. So it was actually back in 2015 that I got the diagnosis. And it was interesting because when I got that diagnosis, I was 48, and they don't typically test you for prostate cancer until you're 50, unless you have a family history. And I had mistakenly thought that my dad had said he had had prostate cancer. So I told my doctor, I had a new doctor, and she was going over family history, and she asked about cancer. And I said, oh, well, yeah, my dad had prostate cancer. Turns out my dad never had prostate cancer. He had an enlarged prostate. But thank God I made that mistake because they did find that I had cancer. And the interesting thing about my cancer diagnosis is that I had no symptoms, absolutely no symptoms whatsoever. So I got the diagnosis. And one of the things that happened for me is anytime a doctor talks to you about cancer, they immediately start talking about treatment. He never asked me once about lifestyle, what I ate, stress levels, any of those, none of those things. And at the time, I didn't know what I know now. And so I just followed what he said. And he said, well, you need to have surgery sooner than later. And so I did what he said to do. And then I ended up having about 125 radioactive seeds placed in my prostate. And when I tell you, I had every negative side effect after that imaginable. I had incontinence, I had erectile dysfunction. None of these things my doctor talked about. And it was at that point that I began to educate myself on cancer and healing, because the doctors had a prescription for everything, for the erectile dysfunction and the incontinence. And I didn't want to go down that road because I knew that most of the medications he was talking about had side effects. And so you take a pill for this, then you'll need another pill for that. And it was then that I began to educate myself. And one of the things that I discovered was that doctors don't have a lot of knowledge about healing. I found that most medical schools, only 20% of medical schools require that doctors take a single class in nutrition. So healing was nothing that he was aware of. And so I started educating myself on cancer and prostate cancer specifically, and found that so much of what I ate, there was a correlation between my diet and prostate cancer. I used to love dairy. That was like ice cream and cheese were like a staple. And there is a strong correlation between that and cancer. Meat, you know, all the stuff that they put in the meat are so toxic for the body. And so I began to educate myself and began to change my diet, because before my cancer diagnosis, I ate the standard American diet that was high in sugar, dairy, and meat. And I knew that I wanted my body to heal, and I didn't want to have to experience cancer again, because one of the things I realized, if you keep doing the same things, you go back to eating the same way, you're probably going to get the same results later on. And so that's kind of really what prompted me on this health journey that I'm on.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
One quick question that I have before Solange we rebounce on your question is, how did you know that you needed to go and start tested? Because you indicated that you got tested, right, for cancer. What brought you to even go to the doctor to want to take a test for that?
I was just going for a routine visit, and I had a new doctor, and the new doctor just asked those family history questions. And it's so interesting because, you know, they ask those questions, but like I said, no one in my family had prostate cancer. I made that mistake. And what I've learned is that, you know, we often say certain diseases run in families. And what I've come to know is that it's the eating habits that lead to the diseases that run in families. A lot of it is not genetic. It's a lot of, we are eating the same foods. If we're eating the same foods, the likelihood of us getting similar diagnosis is very high.
Right.
Yeah. I can say that you are very lucky.
Thank you.
Yes, so go ahead, Solange.
Yeah, just one, Giselle.
No, you have a question for Harold?
Yeah, I was just wondering that, is there an history of chronic disease like cancer in your family? I think that you answered about that earlier.
Yeah, so like I said, my dad didn't have prostate cancer, and my mother didn't either. My aunt, though, likes to say that there's a history in our family, but again, I don't believe that. I believe a lot of it has to do with diet and stress, you know. Yeah. And I know that prior to my diagnosis, not only was I eating badly, I was under a tremendous amount of stress. And that affects our immune system. And when our immune system is weakened, we're susceptible to all kinds of ailments and diseases. And we just don't talk about that enough in our community. And like I said, my doctor never had that conversation with me about what I was eating, what was my stress level like. And I think for so many of us, we normalize stress and we don't even realize we're stressed out because it's just kind of normal. We get up and go.
Yes, and this is a point that we also underline because in naturopathy, we believe that all the diseases are the same. It's only the impact that they have on each one of us that is different. Because I have some clients also, you know, they say that, okay, the father never have cancer, but the children have it, or the opposite side. And a disease can be manifested in a person in different ways. So it can be cancer from somebody. It can be, I don't know, Alzheimer for others people, but they are all correlated. And I think that the most part of them is the stress and inflammatory condition that is in the origin of these diseases.
Right, right. And you know what I've come to learn is that a lot of times, like when I would eat cheese and ice cream, I always would have pain or I would feel like I was having cold-like symptoms. And what I've come to know now is that pain is information, but often we just kind of don't pay attention to it. We'll take Lactate or something just so we can eat things that are communicating to us through the pain, through the aches, that this isn't good for us, you know, but because of our conditioning, we think that, you know, this is normal.
Yeah, the body signals. This is important to listen to our body.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So just to make it clear for our audience here, inflammation in itself is not bad, right? Because our body is a way for our body to react to any external events. So there is something that we call the acute inflammation and the chronic inflammation. Any acute inflammation, it's okay, it's acceptable because your body is kind of fighting naturally. But it's when it gets to a point where it becomes a chronic inflammation that it is dangerous, right? And that is what you definitely want to control.
Mm-hmm.
So my question for you, Howard, is how did you welcome the transitioning from the old type of diet to the new one? Because I believe you're a vegan, right? Have you been vegan since 2019?
Yeah, vegan, yeah.
How have you welcomed the transition from the previous diet that you were on to the new one?
Well, you know, it was interesting because as I began to change what I was eating, I just started feeling better. And I became addicted to how I felt, you know, having more clarity, having more energy, you know, not having to drink caffeine or coffee to pick me up, just being fueled by the nutrition. And for me, I didn't grow up eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. So I started juicing, started fueling my body through juicing. And I just started to notice that a lot of the cravings that I had initially before I started changing my diet, I didn't have them because I think a lot of times our bodies are craving nutrition and we think that it's craving calories and sugar. It's craving nutrition. So you can be eating a lot of calories and still feel hungry or still, you know, because you're not getting the nutrition. And so for me, I didn't overnight become vegan, and I never even intended to become vegan. That was not my plan. I just started eliminating certain things out of my diet that I knew were harmful, you know, starting with the cheese, and I used to love eggs. I just started eliminating certain things and incorporating healthier options, and I just started to love how I was feeling. And one of the things, I'm 55 now, and I often hear my friends talking about, you know, dealing with arthritis and high blood pressure. I don't have any of those things, and I know it's a direct correlation to what I'm putting in my body.
Right, right, 100% agree. I mean, I started eating a raw living food as well back in 2019. I think we started the journey probably at the same time after being diagnosed of asthma. So the diagnosis for me was like, never had this in my life. No one in my family ever heard of that. In fact, as a matter of fact, I was the only one and the first one to bring the name asthma before. So they were like, what is that?
Right.
I had to go through a journey of educating them about asthma as I was also learning about the disease, and also welcoming a new way of eating, because I've learned through several ways that a raw living food was the way to go. So same to you, just like you, I started juicing. Raw juicing was at the very beginning of my journey. And that's what I was doing, like the beet juice and the kale juice. I was loading with that and probably drinking like 600 ml a day, right? And then within 10 months, I was able to successfully revert my asthma naturally using food as medicine. And of course, it's not just about food. Let's be clear here, okay? It's not just about food. Food is the first step because that's where we get it wrong most of the time, right? But it's also about lifestyle. It's also about understanding where your food is coming from. Like I'm so much picky about knowing exactly how my food was grown. If I don't know it, I grow it myself, right? The sprouts, for example, so on and so forth. So you need to also understand where your food is coming from so that you don't get pesticides into your body or GMOs or anything like that. But you also need to embrace the fact that lifestyle is holistic, right? I had to do a work of body, mind, and soul on myself. I reconnected with meditation. I reconnected with yoga. I cut down on toxic people. So I think it's a holistic approach, but we all need here to understand that food is maybe the best way to start, but there's much more than food. Like Solange and I often have a debate that nutrition, people misunderstand what nutrition means. Nutrition is nourishment, right? And nourishment can be made at several levels, not just through food.
Right.
Yes, you're right. And the one thing important to know also is that the only impact is not nutrition, because we are talking about nutrition, but most of people don't know what is nutrition exactly. I am Dr. Nutrition. I have started my nutrition study at the university. I graduated with a PhD in biology and nutrition. I found that I know everything in nutrition and I was wrong. So I used to have my clients and I told them, how can you become obese? Because we know that what is nutrition. But later, when I come to Canada, I become obese later. So I was like, oh, I am Dr. Nutrition. I'm just playing and doing what I have learned at school, and it doesn't work on me. Now I can understand my old clients. And now I go back and I open my mind and I say, no, something's getting wrong. So just be careful about what we are teaching at school. Because at school, we know that they say, okay, eat dairy, this is good for the health. I don't say that dairy is bad for health. But the dairy today, with the additive, the transformation of the food, that's getting bad. It's not the food in itself, but it's the transformation at the end that is bad for the health. And this was something that I learned. So I go back to school and I go back in a natural way now. And I understand that the nutrition only is not enough. We have to understand, because we have our own doctor, we are our own doctor, we have to understand what is the impact of each food on our own body.
Right.
And I am not against, I am with I work with medical doctors, I support them, and it is important for you guys to go and visit your medical doctors as a routine, what you have done, Harold. But it is also important to have the knowledge of what is the impact of the food or impact of the environment on you, because this unfortunately, your medical doctor doesn't take account of that. They only see, okay, they are just here to extend the fire because you are in an emergency case. But what is important is the prevention at the beginning. So usually they don't check about your lifestyle. They don't check what you are doing. And most of the things, as we can notice, and Gisele and me have a lot of clients on that, you only change the lifestyle and that's bring them back to the initial health. Most of the time, this is not only the only solution, but it's helped a lot. And it's important to you to know also in nutrition, there is nutrition in nutrition. So people will say, okay, I used to take 5 dairies glasses per day and I'm still sick. Just go and check what is the impact of these dairies on your body. Does it fit your body or no? Right. What is the impact? Because we also know that there's a gut inflammation or the gut bacteria, they are not the same according to one person to the other. So it is important to listen to your body and adapt to the nutrition according to your body's needs.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that people give themselves grace, you know, if they're on a transitional journey, because when you're so accustomed to eating a certain way, and if your friends and family, you know, it can be an adjustment. And I think figuring out what works for you, and, you know, trying different things and seeing what makes you feel better, what gives you energy, what makes you feel whole. And so I don't never, you know, promote telling someone that they need to become vegan or need to become raw. You know, listen to your body and try different things that work for you, because not everything that works for me will work for someone else.
Exactly.
Right. And Harold, did you have any transitional diet before becoming vegan? Because I know for myself, for example, when I started my journey, it was hard for me to break my habits, right? And I knew that I needed to start eating raw food at some point. So I started raw juicing, obviously. But when it came to the hard food that I needed to eat, I had to check myself up a couple times. So what I did is I had a middle or a transitional phase there. I became a pescatarian at one point. And then from that, I became raw plant-based, right? I started eating a plant-based diet. So did you have such an experience where you were in the middle of both before being vegan, or not at all?
Well, because I never intended to become vegan, I just had started eliminating certain things out of my diet. And then I realized, I'm like, I'm not eating any of, you know, the dairy and the meat anymore. And so for me, it was a slow transition, but I wasn't intended to become vegan at all. I just simply, once I started eliminating all the things that I did, I realized, oh my God, I guess this means I'm vegan, because I wasn't eating, you know, meat and I said, or dairy or seafood. It's like, oh, I guess I'm vegan. But one of the mistakes that I made was, there's a lot of vegan junk food that just because it says vegan does not mean that it's healthy. And initially I was eating a lot of vegan junk food, and it caused me to gain weight. I was like, what is going on? But so that's one of the things that I would caution individuals who are just kind of starting their journey to healthier living. Just because something says it's vegan doesn't equal healthy.
Yeah. Exactly, completely, 100% agree with you. And this is something that I used to tell to the people when we're starting this journey. It is very important to not eat a lot of transformed food. It's better to do everything by ourselves at home. This is a big work, but once we get it, after it's better. Because I have some people tell me that, okay, how can I do? Because how can I know that they are good or not? I usually tell them, if you have more than 3 ingredients, so go back home and cook by yourself. That's going to be easier for you. Right. And it is important. This is a good point that you underline, because it is good for you guys to just mention that. And it is important for us also to know what we can eat and what is good for us.
Mm-hmm.
So Harold, I have a question for you when it comes to your mental health, right? And the reason why I'm talking about that is because I usually tell my clients that reverting a chronic condition is first of all a mental health before becoming a physical health. You have to be strong mentally. Otherwise, there are days where you really feel low and you give up, right? I had a lot of those moments on my journey. And I don't know if you ever had that. If you did, what was your anchor? What did you stood up for in order to be able to overcome that?
Well, you know, after I had the surgery, for about a year, I was in excruciating pain for almost a year. Like just going to the restroom was just unimaginable pain. And just having to go to the restroom so frequently and just being uncomfortable for almost a year, it was frustrating. It was scary because I'm like, am I going to have this pain forever? Is it ever going to end? Because I didn't want to take any of the pain meds or anything. And I remember I would go into the bathroom because my son was in high school at the time, and I didn't want him to hear me because I would literally be screaming from the pain. And I would go into the bathroom and I started writing notes on my bathroom mirror to affirm myself, reminding myself that I was enough, that I was going to get through this. And I think that was so important for me to do that internal work, just to remind myself that this too shall pass, that I was going to get through this. And I think it's important anytime you're going through a health crisis, that to remind yourself that you can get through it, that you will get through it, and that so that was really important for me, and just getting still and taking time just to reconnect. I think so many of us have experienced like childhood trauma and stuff that we've not dealt with. And so for me, going to getting into therapy, you know, was really helpful. Just having someone to talk to, because a lot of times people don't understand what you're going through. Because I looked okay. So they didn't know the pain I was going through. They didn't know the horrifying experience I had because I had to go to the store to buy Depends, and I had to wear Depends because of the incontinence. So just having someone to talk to, you know, really helped me. And I started doing a lot of journaling, you know, and just started getting in touch with what I was feeling. Because sometimes we're so numb, we don't even know what we're feeling because we've just kind of numbed ourselves through overeating or alcohol or drugs or overworking. We don't even really know what we really want, what really makes us happy. And so for me, and I say it now, you know, cancer for me really was a blessing in disguise. Yes, the disease is horrible, but it helped to get me to where I am, and it helped me to disrupt, you know, the life that really wasn't fulfilling, the life where, and, you know, I'm sure if I had continued on the path that I was on, I'd have all kind of ailments. I'd have diabetes, I'm sure. I have high blood pressure. I'd have all those things, but I don't, you know, and I'm healthier now, and I feel better now at 55 than I did even at 25, so.
Wow. How long did it take you to revert your cancer naturally?
So it was after about a year that, you know, I went and had a test that they told me what I already knew. I already knew that the cancer was gone because I by that time I, you know, had completely eliminated, you know, all of the things that are related to cancer, and I was fueling my body with a lot of raw foods and juicing, and so he was just confirming what I already knew.
Yeah, usually you know it when you walk into those appointments. Yeah. I knew it myself when I reverted my asthma. I knew it, and when I did the breathing test, whatever it is that they do, he was like, "You don't seem to have any symptom. What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm here. You guys scheduled my appointment to be here." But you usually have the answer to that, and it's so rewarding to know that you know what is wrong, and you are doing the right thing. That's the most important thing, knowing exactly what is the root cause. Right. Don't deal with the symptom, deal with the root cause, and the symptom eventually is going to go away on its own.
And for me, the erectile dysfunction went away, the incontinence. I mean, my body was, you know, completely healed and without any assistance from any type of medication.
Yeah. And there's nothing wonderful than to know how to manage our own body.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So one thing that Solange and I came to understand as well, because Solange and I kind of have a similar path. We were born, well, in Africa, in Benin, especially. While Solange was born in Benin, I was born in Gabon, but it's the same Africa. We were raised in China, in Asia. We studied in France, And then we came to America and then to Canada. So we have traveled the whole world and we know exactly what people eat on those different continents. So to really realize that we had health issues that we needed to go through, asthma for myself and obesity for Solange, it was eye-opening for us to know that there are deeper issues that impact our chronic condition, things such as culture, for example, that I always underestimated, right? I come from an African culture originally where everything is cooked, spicy, cooked, and everything that you know has to go on the fire, right? And it's until I had my asthma that I realized that almost nothing is fresh. Nothing is eaten like directly from the ground, right? So I had to make a lot of adjustments mentally, emotionally, and also culturally to understand that it's not because my great-grandfathers were doing that, that it's okay for my body to continue to accept that if that is not working for me.
Right.
So I think a lot of times we also have to deal with the reality of knowing that the roadblock might be cultural related, and in some instances it might not be, but there's something that I call the primary foods versus the secondary foods, right? The primary food is anything that impacts you that is not eaten. You don't put them in your mouth. Things such as your career, your relationship, your spirituality, your physical activity, your culture, all those elements, they impact your health one way or the other.
Right.
Let's listen, when you don't have a career, how stressful you are. When you don't have a stable relationship, or when you're in a toxic relationship, how deeply you are affected, right? And culture, same thing with me. So there's this place that I call the primary foods that impact our health. And then you have the secondary food that we also need to be careful about, which is the food that we put in our mouth. And we just spoke about the secondary foods, right? The dairy, the gluten, the corn, all those elements that are impacting our gut that we need to remove, but be mindful of the impacts on our gut, right? So it helps to unpack when you walk that journey, but it is worth it. And I'm glad you took that road. Solange, do you have any last question for Harold before we let him go?
Yes, I have the last question about, I would like to know, what was your anchor on the days that were challenging for you on that wellness journey?
So the days that were challenging for me, you know, it was interesting because when I was going through my cancer experience, I don't think people knew what to say to me, you know, and so I spent a lot of time alone because people like cancer, they didn't want to say the wrong thing. And so for me, it was kind of an isolating journey, and it was what I needed. You know, I needed to be alone. And so, it was during that time that I started to, like I said, journaling and reading books on healing. I just started educating myself because I decided I was going to become my own advocate. I said, let me educate myself. I said, there's too much information out there for me to rely on a medical system that I feel is skewed in a way that just focuses on medication and surgery. So I just took that time to really educate myself, and that made me feel empowered, you know, so that I would know, you know, that I don't have to listen to everything that my doctor is saying. We could have a conversation. I could bring up information that maybe he wasn't aware of, because a lot of times we think doctors know everything, and they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. I agree 100% with you. So there's an important element that you mentioned, and I wanted to come back to that support system. If you all are listening here and you're undergoing a chronic condition as well, it's very important that you stick to a support system or you have one in place. And I know, Harold, you spoke about affirmations, daily affirmations that you were making. You were journaling. You educated yourself, which is at the very top. You need to start educating yourself on healthy food choices.
Mm-hmm.
For me, personally, just to give you an example, I was doing some of those affirmations as well. As a matter of fact, I had a date stick to my fridge at that time that I wanted to start my journey. I think it was January 13th, 2019. I stick that date on the fridge, and every day I was walking into the kitchen, it was my daily reminder that I needed to overcome asthma naturally. And the more I was reading that, the more I was motivated to make healthy food choices. And guess what? Kitchen is where you usually go and eat, right? And that was where I had my sticker. So that was one. And the second thing that I did was also Taekwondo, because I know that when you're on a journey to revert a chronic condition, you need to let go of that stress. You need to let go of that anger. You need to let go of that frustration that sometimes gets your way. So I started doing some Taekwondo because I needed to punch something or someone. Yeah, I roll in that. And that was my happy place. When I was going to Taekwondo, I was just letting go. And after that, I was feeling really refreshed, at peace, and yoga started following, and everything fell back in place, right? But very important that you have a support system. If you don't have people to support you, have yourself, have a living God or someone that is higher than yourself, whatever it is that you call it, and have some mechanism in place, whatever it is, affirmation and journaling and Taekwondo, whatever it is.
Yes, exact. And something very important that you have to know when you start a journey, just be patient, because the food that you are eating today is not tomorrow that you're going to have the consequences, but it's maybe in 1 week, 1 month, 6 months. In nutrition, usually we say you have the impact of the food you are eating today in 6 months. So because that's going to change your cells, and know also that the body cells, they are renewal, and you have to be patient, because it's only few days after that you're going to see the consequences. Because usually I have some people tell me, I start yoga with you, I start meditation, I clean all my nutrition, the bad food that I have, the junk food, I eating healthy. That's a week ago, but nothing happens. Yeah, for sure, nothing can happen. You have to be very patient. It took me 3 years to get better from my obesity, and also to reverse from my obesity, and also to stop having the chronic diseases. So it is important for you guys. It's not easy, for sure, but when you have the step on, that's going to be easier after, once you know that you have the key.
Mm-hmm. That is so important, because like I said, for about a year, I was dealing with the incontinence and the erectile dysfunction. And even though I was doing things to help heal my body, it didn't happen overnight, you know. Yeah. And it's sometimes we you know, we all want it to happen overnight, but you know, and if you've been eating a certain way for 40 some odd years, and all of this toxins and stuff, it's a process. And I always encourage people to give yourself grace, and to give yourself time, and do the things that you know are making you feel better. Journaling is going to make you feel better. Exercising, fueling your body with healthy nutrients is going to make you feel better, and you'll get to healing, you know, but it just may not be next week.
Right. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much, Harold, for being part of this journey. You guys, I don't know if you have any questions. We've been here for over half an hour now, and we don't want to take much more of Harold's time, but I don't see any major questions that we have here. But thank you so much, Harold, for being part of this live. I appreciate you so much. We appreciate you so much, and we wish you all the good luck on your wellness journey.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.